Gerald, I'm just speechless here as you go over this. I mean, we have the Goldman Sachs internal emails. We have the JP Morgan internal info. They premeditatedly, going back 4 years ago, sold governments, sold pension funds, sold private individuals derivatives that they knew were worthless while they were preparing to bet against them. And in their own emails, they say this will destroy our competition. But the media is only focusing on the Timberwolf emails with Goldman Sachs when the others are far worse. And now they're announcing, don't worry, we're engaged in financial terrorism, give us unlimited trillions, and we'll bring back the good times. But then separately 2 weeks ago in the Washington Post, the head of the IMF bragged. He said, for rich nations, this was the headline, the good times are over. The party's over. You're not going to be able to retire. We're going to take your pension funds. They're getting ready for it here. Our media won't say why the Greeks are rioting. They just say austerity. But when we talk about austerity, Gerald Celente, explain to people what austerity means under these Madoff types.
Well, what it means is that everybody's standard of living declines. They tax you to death. They make it more and more impossible for small people to get into businesses because they put more and more charges on top of them and direct all the business to the big guys. Let's make this really clear about this bailout going to Greece. Number one, it's against the European Monetary Union Charter for any bailouts. Number two, it's explicitly against the European Monetary Union Charter for an IMF bailout. Who's the biggest funder of the IMF? Us. We, the people of the United States. We're the people that are now bailing out the banks, the JP Morgan Chase, the Goldman Sachs gang, the Merrill Lynch mob, the Credit Suisse. Where is all this money going to? It's going to the bankers. Number one, it's against the European Monetary Union. And number two, now we're footing the bill so these guys can get bailed out. What you're seeing happening in Greece with the people taking to the streets is going to happen worldwide. I want to make this very clear because, Alex, this is going to lead, one of the elements leading to the Great War. Systems are going to be breaking down. They're not going to be able to stop the people any more than they're able to stop them in Thailand. Thailand hardly makes the news. People don't know anything of what's going on there. You've heard me say this over and over again. My expression as a Bronx guy is when people lose everything and they have nothing left to lose, they're losing it. And they're going to be losing it against the red carpet crowd who believe that they are the entitled people, that they could fix everything if only you give them anything, everything.
And I want to add something to that because the magnitude of this fraud with banker bailouts, they're not bailouts. They make money on the way up selling the crud. Then when the governments and companies and pension funds that have bought the fraud start imploding, the government gives taxpayer money as a bailout to the private banks that engineered the fraud to then lend the money to the government or to the pension fund that's now bankrupt, and then now those pension funds are even in more debt to the same bankers that engineered it. So to quantify this, we loan the banks the money that they then loan us back. I mean, this is fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud, and you notice that as soon as they agreed to the $146.5 billion for Greece, that suddenly Portugal and Spain started going under because the banks said, look, they bought this, now let's trigger it here. And so they're holding all of us hostage, and they own the mainstream media. And so the mainstream media, most of the time, will not tell the truth. Dylan Ratigan does occasionally. They'll let Ron Paul on sometimes to tell the truth. But, I mean, here's the Washington Post headline. For nations living the good life, the party is over, IMF says. Washington Post. But I mean, going back to that, the level of these... Wow, that was crazy. That sounded like one of those party horns. I guess we lost Gerald Celente. That happens occasionally with the video Skype connections. So we're going to connect back to Gerald Celente and continue along those lines. with our guest today. Special effects brought to you by Skype, I guess. Do we have Gerald back? We don't? Okay, we're going to go to break in a moment, and I'm going to bring that question back to him after the break. It isn't just that the banks sell derivatives and then the economy implodes, and then we have to bail the nations out. When you read about this Greek plan or the U.S. plan or what happened in England in the last wave, our money then goes to the banks. Gerald, you got cut off. We're going to break, but start answering the question about how we loan them our money to loan back to us.
Yeah, but you see, you left one element out, Alex. You have to be fair about this. They give the government all of their toxic crap as collateral. That's what they use as the sham to make it legitimate. And that's what's been going on. The governments around the world have been using this lie that they have collateral so that they can then loan the banks money at near zero interest rates so that the banks could go back out, reloan it to us, and continuing their gambling.
All right, stay there. We got to go to break. So you're right. It's even worse than I was saying. All right, we got cut off by the break. Gerald Celente, trendsresearch.com, an invaluable website. Check it out today. Our websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. I want to take a few calls before Gerald Celente leaves us, but they have to be questions specifically, quick questions for Gerald Celente. But we love the directions, the spin the wheel directions that people take us in, the different angles that we wouldn't have thought of. I want to pick his brain here today. 1-800-259-9231. 1-800-259-9231. But, Gerald, you make a great point. I can't even properly describe how big the fraud is. They sell the derivatives knowing it's crap. They have insurance companies certify it. The insurance companies get bailed out after they already get paid to certify it. The big banks get to fence the assets and buy real assets when the bubble's being inflated. Then when it implodes, the banks get bailed out with trillions of dollars, and then they say, oh, but we're going to give the governments the toxic assets, and every economist we've talked to have said that those have negative value, so they're actually giving the governments a time bomb, so it's a triple screw job.
That's right, and let's not forget the rating agencies, as you mentioned. They get a free ride as well. They're getting paid to rate the junk, and they rate the junk excellent. You can't get away with this in real life. And I've said this over and over again. The merger of state and corporate powers is called fascism, and fascism has come to America. We're talking about the financial sector. We could talk about it in agriculture. We could talk about it in pharmaceutical. We could talk about it in retail. Every sector of this country is controlled by a handful. What is it, Alex? 6 banks controlling 60% of all of the action in the country. How can you deny what's going on? You can't. This is not socialism. And I heard you talking about, before I came on the air, about these drug busts and how they use these fascist tactics to beat up people, to beat up the little guy for, smoking a joint, while they let the big guys free and turn, quote, a blind eye to opium production in Afghanistan because they don't want to hurt the family farmer's income. Who are they kidding with this stuff? So what we're looking at is really a complete takeover. And when people say, why isn't the government doing anything? They think that there's a revolving door. That's the story that they've been fed. Well, the people go out of government and then into these private corporations, and they have an inside track. It's not a revolving door. It's a wide open door. And that door is filled with the same people in every agency that are fronting for the big corporations, whether it's the Goldman Sachs gang or whether it's agriculture. It's the same story over and over again.